The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor of my garage. 3 a.m, and I was still under the hood of my '98 Ford, trying to coax another year out of the transmission. Sleep had become a luxury I couldn't afford, not with the bills piling up and Lila's increasingly expensive tastes. "Jack, you're pathetic," I muttered to myself, wiping my hands on an oil-stained rag. 42 years old and still playing mechanic in your own garage. That's when I heard voices outside. Lila's laugh, high and artificial, the kind she reserved for impressing people she thought mattered. But it was past midnight on a Tuesday. What was she doing out there? I crept to the small window that faced our driveway. Through the grimy glass, I could see my wife of 18 years pressed against the side of a silver BMW I didn't recognize. The man with her was tall, well-dressed, everything I wasn't. His hands were on her waist, and she was looking up at him like he'd just promised her the moon. The inheritance should clear probate within 6 weeks, the stranger was saying. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who'd never worried about a mortgage payment. 500,000 is nothing to sneeze at. My inheritance. The money from my uncle's estate that we'd been waiting on for months. Lila knew about it, of course. We'd discussed what we'd do with the windfall. Pay off the house, maybe take a real vacation for once. But hearing this stranger discuss it like it was already his made my stomach twist. "Nathan, you're sure Jack won't suspect anything?" Lila's voice had that breathless quality I remembered from our early dating days. When had she stopped using that tone with me? "Your husband's too busy playing with his toys in that garage to notice what's happening right under his nose," Nathan replied. "Besides, once we get access to that safe deposit box, we can clean him out before he knows what hit him." I pressed closer to the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. They were planning to steal from me. My own wife was conspiring with some smooth-talking stranger to rob me blind. "What about Maddie?" Lila asked, referring to our 16-year-old daughter. "She'll understand when she's older. Kids adapt. And with the money we'll have, we can give her opportunities Jack never could." The casual way they discussed destroying our family, as if I were just an inconvenience to be swept aside, ignited something dark inside me. I'd spent 20 years building a small electrical contracting business from nothing. I'd worked 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat when times were tough. And this was my reward? They kissed then, long and passionate, right there in my driveway. When they finally broke apart, Nathan climbed into his BMW and drove away. Lila stood there for a moment, smoothing her hair and checking her reflection in the car's window before walking back toward the house. I waited until I heard the front door close, then slipped out the side entrance of the garage. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and betrayal. I walked to where they'd been standing, looking for any evidence of what I'd witnessed. That's when I noticed something glinting in the gravel, a business card that must have fallen from Nathan's pocket. Nathan Hartwell, Senior Financial Advisor, Prestige Investment Group. His office was downtown, in one of those glass towers where people like him made their living off other people's money. I pocketed the card and headed back inside. Lila was already upstairs, probably washing off the scent of her lover before sliding into bed next to me. The thought made me nauseous. Instead of going upstairs, I sat in my kitchen, staring at Nathan's business card under the harsh fluorescent light. For 18 years, I'd been the dependable husband, the steady provider, the guy who fixed what was broken and kept everything running smoothly. I'd been taken for granted, overlooked, dismissed as harmless. Maybe it was time to show them just how wrong they were. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning brought the kind of gray October day that matched my mood perfectly. I was sitting at the breakfast table, pretending to read the newspaper while Lila bustled around the kitchen in her power suit. She worked as a paralegal at Morrison, Klein & Associates, one of the city's more prestigious law firms. It was a job that had gone to her head over the years, making her feel superior to my blue-collar existence. "You're up early," she said, not looking at me as she poured coffee into her travel mug. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, which was true enough. "Bad dreams." She glanced at me then, and for just a moment I thought I saw guilt flicker across her features. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I'll be working late again tonight," she said. "Big case coming up?" "Of course you will." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Lila paused, her hand on the refrigerator door. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. It just seems like you're working late a lot these days." "Some of us have ambitions beyond fixing broken appliances, Jack." The contempt in her voice was unmistakable. "Some of us want more out of life." There it was. The truth she'd been hiding behind polite indifference for months. In her mind, I was already a failure, a burden to be discarded as soon as she could figure out how to do it profitably. "You're right," I said quietly. "Some of us do want more." She left without another word, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway before I made my move. The safe deposit box was at First National, the same bank where I'd done business for 15 years. The key was hidden in my toolbox, wrapped in an old rag behind my socket set. Lila knew about the box, but had never seen the key. As far as she knew, it contained the usual papers: insurance policies, the deed to the house, maybe some old jewelry from my mother. She was about to discover how wrong she was. I drove downtown in my pickup truck, feeling strangely calm for a man whose world had just collapsed. The bank was busy with the morning rush, full of people conducting their normal, honest business. I wondered how many of them were living lies as elaborate as mine had become. "Morning, Jack," called Betty Morrison from behind the teller counter. She'd known me since I'd opened my first checking account. "What brings you in so early?" "Need to access my safe deposit box," I said. "Some paperwork I need to review." She led me to the vault, making small talk about the weather and her grandson's Little League season. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the reliable, boring electrician she expected me to be. It was a role I'd perfected over the years, and it had served me well. People underestimated boring men. They forgot we were capable of surprises. The box was small, about the size of a shoebox, but it contained everything I needed. I removed the envelope I'd placed there 6 months ago, back when I'd first started suspecting Lila's infidelity. Inside were photographs, printed emails, phone records, a complete dossier of my wife's affair with Nathan Hartwell. But that wasn't all. The box also contained evidence of Nathan's less-than-ethical business practices, information I'd gathered through careful investigation and a few well-placed contacts in the financial industry. It turned out that Prestige Investment Group's senior advisor had been skimming from client accounts for years, covering his tracks with elaborate shell games that would make a Las Vegas dealer proud. I'd been planning to confront Lila with the evidence of her affair, maybe use it to negotiate a fair divorce settlement. But after last night, I realized that wasn't nearly enough. They wanted to play games with my money, my life, my family. Fine. But they were about to learn that I played by different rules. I placed everything back in the box except for one item, a second key, identical to the one I'd used to open it. Then I sealed the envelope and left the bank, nodding goodbye to Betty as if this were just another routine transaction. The rest of my plan would require patience, careful timing, and a willingness to embrace the darker aspects of my personality that I'd kept buried for years. Lila and Nathan thought they were dealing with a harmless, predictable man who would roll over and let them take what they wanted. They were about to discover their mistake. 2 days later, I was in Ray's bar, nursing a beer and pretending to watch the evening news. Ray Kowalski had been my friend since high school, back when we'd both harbored dreams of escaping our small city for bigger things. He'd ended up buying this dive bar on the wrong side of downtown, while I'd started my electrical business. We'd both stayed, but at least Ray seemed content with his choices. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Ray said, polishing a glass with practiced efficiency. At 55, he still looked like the linebacker he'd been in high school, all broad shoulders and thick hands. "Worse," I replied. "Someone's trying to steal my future." Ray set down the glass and leaned against the bar. "Want to talk about it?" Before I could answer, the front door opened and in walked Nathan Hartwell, looking supremely out of place in his expensive suit and Italian shoes. He glanced around the bar with barely concealed distaste before spotting me and making his way over. "Jack Morrison?" he asked, extending a manicured hand. "Nathan Hartwell, Prestige Investment Group. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance." I stared at his hand for a moment before shaking it. His grip was firm but soft, the hands of a man who'd never worked with tools or gotten them truly dirty. "Do we?" I asked. "Your wife Lila mentioned you might be interested in some investment opportunities. With your uncle's estate settling soon, I thought we should meet." The audacity was breathtaking. He was actually going to try to con me to my face, probably figuring I was too stupid to see through whatever scheme he and Lila had cooked up. "Lila talks about our finances with strangers?" I asked. Nathan's smile faltered slightly. "We're not strangers exactly. Lila and I have been working together on some legal matters. Professional collaboration. I'll bet." I took a long sip of my beer, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "So what kind of investment opportunities are we talking about?" "High-yield bonds, international markets, cryptocurrency derivatives," Nathan said, his confidence returning. "The kind of sophisticated instruments that can turn a modest inheritance into real wealth? Sounds risky." All worthwhile investments carry some risk, but with my expertise guiding your decisions, I'm confident we can maximize your returns. Ray was listening to this conversation with growing amusement. He caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, silently asking if he should intervene. I shook my head slightly. "Tell you what," I said to Nathan. "Why don't you put together a proposal? Something detailed, with all the risks and potential returns spelled out. I'm not the kind of guy who makes quick decisions with money." "Of course," Nathan replied. "Due diligence is always wise. I'll have something for you by the end of the week." "Perfect. You can present it to both Lila and me together. I always discuss major financial decisions with my wife." For just a moment, Nathan's composure cracked. I saw panic flash across his features before he regained control. "Naturally," he said. "Family financial planning should always be a collaborative effort." After Nathan left, Ray poured himself a shot of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. "Friend of yours?" he asked. "My wife's boyfriend." Ray nearly choked on his second shot. "Come again?" I told him everything, the midnight conversation, the plan to steal my inheritance, Nathan's criminal activities that I'd uncovered. Ray listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. "So what are you going to do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve." "Jack, be careful. Men like that, they don't play fair when they're cornered." "Neither do I said. "Not anymore." The next morning, I put the second phase of my plan into motion. I called Lila at work, using my most apologetic tone. "Honey, I'm sorry about yesterday morning. I was stressed about money, and I took it out on you." "It's fine, Jack," she replied, though I could hear the surprise in her voice. I rarely apologized for anything, mainly because I rarely did anything that required an apology. "I've been thinking about what you said, about having more ambitions. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time I started thinking bigger." "What do you mean?" "This inheritance from Uncle Pete, it's more money than we've ever had. Maybe instead of just paying off bills, we should invest it. Make it grow." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the wheels turning in Lila's head as she tried to figure out how to play this. "That's actually a really good idea," she said finally. "Do you have someone in mind to help with the investments?" "Well, I met this guy yesterday. Nathan something. Said he knew you from work." "Nathan Hartwell?" Lila's voice was carefully neutral. "Yes, I know him. He's very good at what he does." "Great. I asked him to put together a proposal for us. Figured we could review it together, make sure we're both comfortable with whatever we decide." Another pause, longer this time. "Of course. That sounds perfect." "I love you, Lila," I said, meaning it despite everything. That was the tragedy of the whole situation. I did still love her, even as I planned her destruction. "I love you too," she replied, and for a moment I almost believed she meant it. That afternoon I drove to Nathan's office building downtown. The Prestige Investment Group occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming tower that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a year. I didn't go inside. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. Instead, I found Nathan's silver BMW in the parking garage and left a small gift on his windshield. It was a photocopy of one of his client statements, one that showed a discrepancy between the reported returns and the actual account balance. I'd obtained it through a contact who worked in the building's cleaning crew and had access to offices after hours. Technically, it was probably not entirely legal, but then again, neither was embezzlement. Along with the statement, I left a simple note. "You're not as clever as you think. A concerned citizen." I wanted Nathan to know he was being watched, that his crimes weren't as well hidden as he believed. Paranoia would make him sloppy, and sloppy people made mistakes. The next day, Lila came home from work in an agitated mood. She paced around the kitchen while I made dinner, her phone buzzing constantly with text messages. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Just work stuff," she said, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Nathan's been having some problems with a client, accusations of impropriety." "That's terrible. I hope it doesn't affect his ability to help us with our investments." "I'm sure it will all work out," Lila said, but she didn't sound convinced. That evening, after Maddie had gone to her room to do homework, Lila and I sat in the living room watching television. Or rather, I watched while she stared at her phone, typing and deleting messages with increasing frustration. "You know," I said during a commercial break, "I've been thinking about that safe deposit box." Lila looked up sharply. "What about it?" "Well, with all this talk of investments and financial planning, maybe we should review what we have in there. Make sure our important documents are up to date." "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "I'm sure everything's fine." "Still, it wouldn't hurt to check. I was thinking we could go together this weekend, make it a little date. Stop by the bank, then grab lunch somewhere nice." Lila's face had gone pale. "Jack, I don't think... It'll be fun," I interrupted. "How long has it been since we've done anything together? Just the two of us." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out what I was really up to. The problem with living a lie is that it makes you suspicious of everyone else's motives, even when they appear innocent. "Okay," she said finally. "Saturday morning?" "Perfect. I'll call the bank and set up an appointment." That night, as Lila slept fitfully beside me, I lay awake planning the next phase of my revenge. Saturday would be the day I revealed my hand, the day Lila and Nathan discovered that their victim was actually their predator. But first, I had one more surprise to arrange. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made everything look shabby and defeated. Perfect, I thought, as I watched Lila get dressed with unusual care. She'd chosen a conservative business suit, as if she were preparing for a job interview rather than a trip to the bank with her husband. "You look nice," I said, meaning it. Even after everything, Lila was still an attractive woman. It was part of what made her betrayal so painful. "Thank you," she replied, not meeting my eyes. She'd been jumpy all week, ever since I'd mentioned the safe deposit box. Her phone had been buzzing constantly with messages that she'd delete after reading, and she'd taken several hushed phone calls that ended abruptly whenever I entered the room. The drive to the bank was tense, filled with the kind of strained small talk that couples make when they are both hiding something. Lila kept checking her phone, her fingers drumming nervously against her purse. "Expecting an important call?" I asked. "Just work," she said. "You know how it is?" But I knew it wasn't work. Nathan had been calling her constantly, probably trying to figure out who was investigating him and whether it was connected to their plan to rob me. Paranoia was a wonderful thing. It made people act irrationally, reveal more than they intended. First National was busy despite the early hour. Betty Morrison greeted us with her usual warmth, though I noticed her giving Lila a curious look. In all our years of banking here, Lila had never come with me to access the safe deposit box. "Both of you today?" Betty asked. "That's nice. So many couples don't take an active interest in their financial affairs together." "We're trying to be more collaborative," I said, enjoying the irony. "Major decisions should be made as a team." Betty led us to the vault, making the same small talk she always did. But I could feel the tension radiating from Lila as we approached the wall of metal boxes. Her hands were actually shaking as she watched me insert the key. "Nervous?" I asked. "Just excited to see what Uncle Pete left us," she lied. I opened the box and removed the large envelope inside, the one I'd prepared specifically for this moment. Lila leaned forward eagerly, probably expecting to see bank statements or investment documents that she and Nathan could use to access my inheritance. Instead, I handed her a photograph. It was a clear, high-resolution image of her and Nathan in a passionate embrace outside our house, taken the night I'd first discovered their affair. Lila's face went white as she stared at it. "What is this?" she whispered. "Evidence," I said calmly. "Would you like to see the rest?" I spread out the contents of the envelope on the small table in the private viewing room. Photographs of Lila and Nathan at restaurants, hotels, his apartment. Printed emails discussing their relationship and their plans for my money. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between them over the past 6 months. But the real bombshell was the financial documentation I'd gathered on Nathan himself. Evidence of his embezzlement, his falsified client statements, his shell companies designed to hide stolen funds. I'd spent weeks putting it all together, using contacts in the financial industry and my own investigative skills. "My God," Lila breathed, staring at a particularly damning email where Nathan discussed moving client money to offshore accounts. "Where did you get all this?" "Does it matter?" I asked. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Lila looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Jack, I can explain." Can you explain how you were planning to steal my inheritance? How you've been sleeping with a man who's been robbing his clients? How you are going to destroy our family for money?" "It's not what you think," she said desperately. "Nathan and I were not, it's complicated. It seems pretty simple to me. You wanted out of our marriage, but you also wanted my money, so you found a criminal to help you take it." Lila's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Nathan's name appeared on the screen, and I could see her wrestling with whether to answer it. "Go ahead," I said. "Take the call, but put it on speaker. I think Nathan should hear this conversation." "Jack, please, answer it, Lila, or I walk out of here and take all this evidence straight to the police and the State Financial Regulatory Board." With trembling fingers, Lila answered the phone and activated the speaker. "Thank God," Nathan's voice filled the small room. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. We have a problem. Someone's been investigating me, and they know about the client accounts. We need to move up our timeline." "Nathan," Lila said quietly, "Jack's here. He knows everything." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Nathan finally spoke, his smooth confidence was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "What do you mean, he knows everything?" "I mean, he has photographs, emails, financial records. He knows about us, and he knows about what you've been doing with your client's money." "That's impossible. I've been careful." "Apparently not careful enough," I interrupted, speaking directly into the phone. "Hello, Nathan. Enjoying your morning?" "Jack?" Nathan's voice was tight with fear. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Lila and I are just friends, and as for my business practices—" "Save it," I said. "I have copies of everything. Bank records, client statements, emails discussing your offshore accounts. The only question now is what happens next." "What do you want?" Nathan asked, his pretense finally crumbling. "I want you to listen very carefully," I said. "Both of you. This is how things are going to work from now on." I paused, letting the tension build. Lila was staring at me like she'd never seen me before, as if the mild-mannered electrician she'd married had suddenly revealed himself to be something far more dangerous. "First, Nathan, you're going to return every penny you've stolen from your clients. I don't care how you do it. Sell your car, your apartment, liquidate your legitimate investments. But those people are going to get their money back." "That's impossible," Nathan protested. "Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about?" "About $2.3 million, according to my calculations. And yes, I know it's a lot. You should have thought of that before you decided to become a thief. And if I refuse? Then I release all of this information to the authorities, the press, and your clients. How long do you think it will take for them to figure out where their missing retirement funds went?" Another long silence. I could hear Nathan breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "What about Lila?" he asked finally. "What happens to her?" I looked at my wife, who was sitting frozen in her chair, tears streaming down her face. Despite everything she'd done, part of me still felt sorry for her. She'd gotten involved with a criminal, but she wasn't a criminal herself. She was just a woman who'd made terrible choices. "That depends on Lila," I said. "We're going to have a long conversation about the future of our marriage. But that's between us." "Jack," Lila whispered, "I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far." "But they did go this far," I replied. "And now we all have to live with the consequences." I gathered up the evidence and returned it to the envelope, then placed it back in the safe deposit box. Nathan was still on the phone, but he wasn't saying anything. I could imagine him sitting in his expensive office, staring at his computer screen, trying to figure out how his carefully constructed criminal enterprise had collapsed in a single morning. "Nathan," I said, "you have 48 hours to start returning the money. I'll be monitoring the accounts. If I don't see progress by Monday morning, everything goes public." "You're destroying my life," he said bitterly. "No," I replied. "You destroyed your own life the moment you decided to steal from people who trusted you. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." I hung up the phone and turned to Lila, who was still crying silently. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home. We have a lot to discuss." As we walked out of the bank, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For the first time in months, I was in control of the situation. Nathan and Lila had thought they were playing me for a fool, but they'd underestimated the quiet electrician who noticed everything and forgot nothing. The game was far from over, but I just won the first round. The drive home was silent except for Lila's occasional sniffles. I could feel her stealing glances at me, as if she were seeing me clearly for the first time in years. The mild-mannered husband who fixed her coffee every morning and never raised his voice had just systematically dismantled her lover's criminal empire with the precision of a surgeon. "How long have you known?" she asked as I pulled into our driveway. "About the affair? 6 months. About Nathan's embezzlement? 3 months. About your plan to steal my inheritance? Since Tuesday night, when I overheard you two plotting in our driveway." Lila closed her eyes and leaned back against the headrest. "You must hate me." "I should," I said. "But mostly I'm just disappointed. 18 years of marriage, and you thought so little of me that you believed I wouldn't notice my own wife falling in love with someone else." "I never said I was in love with him." "You didn't have to. I saw how you looked at him that night. The way you used to look at me." We sat in the car for another minute, both of us staring at our house, the modest 2-story colonial we'd bought when Maddie was born, back when we'd still believed in our future together. "What happens now?" Lila asked. "That depends on you," I said. "But first, we need to talk about Maddie. She doesn't know about any of this, does she?" "Of course not. Jack, whatever problems you and I have, I would never involve our daughter in." "Good, because she's going to need both of her parents to get through what's coming next." We went inside. and I was relieved to find that Maddie had left for her Saturday job at the local movie theater. She worked there weekends and after school, saving money for college. At 16, she was already more responsible than either of her parents had been at that age. Lila and I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, helped Maddie with homework, and planned what we'd thought would be our future together. Now it felt like a negotiation table in a war zone. "I want you to understand something," I said. "What I did today, exposing Nathan's crimes, that was about justice, not revenge. Those people he stole from, they trusted him with their retirement savings, their children's college funds. He was going to ruin their lives to fund his lifestyle." "I know," Lila said quietly. "I didn't know about the embezzlement until recently, and when I found out, I told him he had to stop." "But you didn't tell him you were leaving him?" She looked away. "It's complicated." "No, it's not. You fell in love with a criminal, and you let that cloud your judgment. You were willing to help him steal from me because you wanted out of this marriage, but didn't want to give up the financial security. That's not fair, isn't it?" I leaned forward, my voice hardening. "You think I don't know about the lawyer you've been consulting? Morrison, Klein & Associates, your own firm. You've been planning to divorce me and take half of everything, including the inheritance." Lila's face went pale again. "How did you—" "I know a lot of things, Lila. I know about the apartment you and Nathan looked at last month. I know about the joint bank account you opened. I know about the lies you've been telling Maddie about why you're working so many late nights." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photograph I'd taken of her and Nathan outside an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place she'd always complained we couldn't afford. "You've been living a double life for months," I continued, "planning your exit strategy while pretending to be a loving wife and mother. The only thing you didn't count on was getting caught." Lila started crying again, harder this time. "I never meant for it to happen. Nathan and I, we just connected. He understood my ambitions, my desire for something more than this." She gestured around our modest kitchen. "Something more than me, you mean? Jack, you're a good man, but you're content with so little. You're happy fixing other people's electrical problems and coming home to watch television. I wanted travel, culture, experiences. Nathan could give me those things. With stolen money. I didn't know that when we started seeing each other. But you knew it when you agreed to help him steal my inheritance." She had no answer for that, because there was no good answer. She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Nathan's name appeared on the screen, and I answered it on speaker without asking Lila's permission. "Jack," Nathan's voice was strained, desperate. "We need to talk. In person." "I don't think that's necessary. Our business is concluded. Please. There are things you don't understand. Complications you're not aware of. If you expose me now, innocent people are going to get hurt. The only innocent people in this situation are your clients, and they're already being hurt by your theft." "That's not what I mean. There are other people involved. People who won't take kindly to having their business arrangements disrupted." A chill ran down my spine. "What kind of people, Nathan?" "The kind you don't want to cross. Look, I know you think you have all the answers, but you're in over your head. Meet me tonight, and I'll explain everything. Then you can decide whether you really want to go through with this." I looked at Lila, who was staring at the phone with the expression of growing horror. "Nathan," she whispered, "you didn't tell me about other people being involved." "Because I was trying to protect you," he snapped. "Both of you. But your husband's little investigation has put us all in danger." "What kind of danger?" I asked. "The kind that doesn't go away just because you have evidence of financial crimes. Meet me at Riverside Park by the old boathouse. 10 o'clock tonight. Come alone." The line went silent. I stared at the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. I'd thought I was dealing with a simple embezzlement scheme, but apparently the situation was more complex than I'd realized. "Lila," I said slowly, "what exactly did Nathan tell you about his business?" "Nothing beyond the basic investment services," she said, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "He said he specialized in high-yield opportunities for select clients." "Did he ever mention working with people outside the normal financial industry? Overseas investors, maybe? Or people who preferred to keep their business arrangements private?" I don't know. Maybe. He got a lot of phone calls that he wouldn't take in front of me, and sometimes he'd have to travel on short notice. But I assumed that was normal for someone in his position. I was beginning to suspect that Nathan's embezzlement was just the tip of the iceberg. If he was laundering money for organized crime or international criminals, then exposing him could indeed put us all in danger. But it was too late to back down now. I'd already made my move, and people like that didn't forgive or forget. "Jack," Lila said, her voice small and frightened, What are we going to do? We're going to finish what we started, I said. But first, I need to make sure Maddie is safe. I called my sister Carol, who lived 2 hours away in Albany. She was divorced with no kids, and she'd always been fond of Maddie. I told her there was a family emergency and asked if Maddie could stay with her for a few days. Carol agreed without asking too many questions, bless her. When Maddie came home from work, I sat her down and explained that her mother and I were having some problems and thought it would be best if she stayed with her aunt while we worked things out. She wasn't happy about it, but she was old enough to understand that sometimes adults needed space to resolve their issues. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked directly. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But whatever happens, we both love you, and that's never going to change." After Maddie left with her overnight bag and a promise to call every day, Lila and I were alone in the house. The silence was oppressive, filled with 18 years of shared history and an uncertain future. "You don't have to meet Nathan tonight," Lila said. "We could just leave, pack up and go somewhere he can't find us, and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. No. Besides, I'm not going to let him get away with stealing from those people, no matter who else he's involved with." "Jack, you don't understand what you're dealing with. If Nathan is mixed up with dangerous people, then it's even more important that he's stopped," I interrupted. "How many other families is he going to destroy? How many more people are going to lose their life savings to fund whatever criminal enterprise he's really running?" Lila stared at me with a mixture of admiration and terror. "When did you become so hard?" "When I realized that being a good man wasn't enough to protect the people I love," I said. "Sometimes you have to be a dangerous man, too." As evening approached, I prepared for my meeting with Nathan. I had no intention of going alone. Ray had agreed to back me up, and I'd also contacted a friend who worked in law enforcement. But I wanted Nathan to think I was isolated and vulnerable. People revealed more when they thought they had the upper hand. "Jack," Lila said as I prepared to leave, "be careful, please." "I will, and Lila, whatever happens tonight, whatever we decide about our marriage, I want you to know that I never regretted loving you, even now." She started crying again as I walked out the door, but I didn't look back. The time for sentiment was over. Now it was time to finish what Nathan had started when he decided to target my family. The old boathouse at Riverside Park had been abandoned for years, a relic from the days when the city had money for recreational facilities. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, isolated, dark, and far from any witnesses who might interfere. As I walked through the park toward the meeting point, I couldn't help but think about how much my life had changed in just 1 week. 7 days ago, I'd been a contented electrician with a stable marriage and a bright future. Now I was walking into a potentially dangerous confrontation with criminals who might not hesitate to eliminate a threat. But I wasn't the same man I'd been a week ago. That man had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best of people even when the evidence suggested otherwise. This man was harder, more calculating, and far more dangerous than anyone realized. Nathan was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The boathouse loomed against the night sky like a monument to decay. Its wooden walls were weathered gray, and several windows were broken, their jagged edges catching moonlight like teeth. I approached carefully, my footsteps muffled by the damp grass. Ray was positioned 50 yards away with a clear view of the building, and Detective Mike Torres, an old friend from high school, was monitoring police radio frequencies from his unmarked car. Nathan's BMW was parked near the entrance, its silver paint gleaming despite the darkness. As I got closer, I could see him pacing back and forth inside the building, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from a distance, his agitation was obvious. I pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The interior smelled of rotting wood and stagnant water. Nathan spun around at the sound, ending his phone call abruptly. "Jack, thank you for coming." "Let's get this over with," I said. "You mentioned complications. I'm listening." Nathan ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, leaving it disheveled for the first time since I'd known him. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. The confident financial advisor had been replaced by a desperate man backed into a corner. "The money I've been managing," he began, "it's not all from legitimate clients. Some of it belongs to people who don't report their income to the IRS, if you understand what I mean. Money laundering. Investment services for privacy-conscious individuals," Nathan corrected. "The distinction is important." "Not to the FBI, it isn't." Nathan laughed bitterly. "The FBI is the least of our problems right now. These people I work with, they don't care about legal niceties. They care about results. And when their money disappears because you've exposed my operations, they're going to want someone to blame. Then you'd better hope you can return their money along with everyone else's." "It's not that simple." Nathan's composure finally cracked completely. Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about? Even if I liquidate everything I own, I'm still short by more than $1 million. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to become a criminal. You self-righteous bastard, Nathan snarled. You think this is some kind of game? These people will hurt your family to get to me. They'll hurt Lila. They'll hurt your daughter. No, they won't, I interrupted calmly. Because you're going to make sure they understand that I had nothing to do with your criminal activities. You're going to explain that you got caught because you were sloppy, not because anyone betrayed them. And why would I do that? I pulled out my phone and showed him a video I'd recorded earlier that evening. It was Nathan's own voice, from one of his phone calls that I'd managed to intercept using equipment I'd borrowed from my electrician's toolkit. In the recording, he was discussing moving money through offshore accounts and complaining about amateur partners who might compromise the operation. Because if anything happens to my family, I said, this recording goes to every law enforcement agency in the country, along with the names and account numbers of everyone you've been laundering money for. Your criminal friends will realize very quickly that you're the liability, not me. Nathan stared at the phone, his face going pale. You recorded my private conversations? I recorded a criminal discussing his crimes. There's a difference. This is insane. You're going to get us all imprisoned or worse. Only if you don't fix the mess you created. Return the money, Nathan. All of it. Find a way to make your criminal associates whole, and then disappear. Change your name, move to another country, whatever it takes, but leave my family alone. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water beyond the broken windows. When he finally spoke, his voice was defeated. There might be a way, he said slowly. I have access to accounts that my associates don't know about. Emergency funds that were supposed to be for situations like this. If I use those to cover the shortfall, then do it. It means I'll have nothing left. No money, no future, no way to start over. You should have considered that before you decided to steal from people who trusted you. Nathan turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something dangerous flicker in his eyes. You know, Jack, there's another solution to this problem, one that doesn't require me to give up everything I've worked for. And what's that? You disappear, tonight. A tragic accident at the old boathouse. Maybe you fell through the rotten floorboards into the water. Without your evidence and your threats, I can manage this situation quietly. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. You're talking about ending me. I'm talking about survival. Mine, and by extension, your family's. Because if I go down, Jack, I'm taking everyone with me. Lila knew more about my business than she's admitted. She helped me access client information, forge documents, move money between accounts. She's not the innocent victim you think she is. You're lying. Am I? Ask her about the Cayman Islands account she helped me set up. Ask her about the client files she copied from her law firm's database. Your wife isn't just an adulteress, Jack. She's an accessory to multiple felonies. The words hit me like a physical blow. I thought about Lila's behavior over the past few months, her sudden interest in our finances, her knowledge of legal procedures that went beyond her paralegal training. Had she been more involved than I'd realized? Even if that's true, I said, it doesn't change anything. The money still needs to be returned. But it changes everything about your position, Nathan replied, because now you have to choose. Expose me and watch your wife go to prison, or find a way for all of us to walk away from this. What are you proposing? A partnership. You help me cover up the missing money, and I help you disappear the evidence of Lila's involvement. We all start fresh, no questions asked. By letting your victims lose their life savings. By accepting that sometimes there are no perfect solutions. Sometimes you have to choose between bad and worse. I stared at Nathan, realizing that he'd just revealed the fundamental difference between us. He saw the world as a series of transactions, where everything had a price and everyone could be bought. But some things weren't for sale. There's a third option, I said, which is? You return every penny you stole, accept responsibility for your crimes, and face the consequences like a man. And if Lila was involved, then she faces the consequences too. Nathan laughed. You'd really sacrifice your own wife to satisfy your sense of justice? I'd sacrifice anyone to protect innocent people from criminals like you? Then you're a fool, Jack, and fools don't survive in the real world. Nathan reached into his jacket, and for a moment I thought he might be going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a thick envelope and tossed it on the ground between us. Photographs, he said. Your wife and me, but also your wife with other men. She's been cheating on you for years, Jack, not just with me. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, phone records, everything you need to destroy her in a divorce court. I stared at the envelope, but didn't pick it up. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand what you're really fighting for. Your marriage is over. Your wife is a criminal and a serial cheater. Your family is already destroyed. The only question now is whether you're going to be practical about salvaging what you can from the wreckage. And your definition of practical is letting you continue stealing from innocent people. My definition of practical is accepting reality. The money is gone, Jack. Even if I liquidate everything, most of those people are never going to see their investments again. At least this way, you and Lila can start over with clean slates. I looked around the abandoned boathouse, thinking about the choices that had led us to this moment. A week ago, my biggest worry had been whether I could afford to take Lila on a vacation for our anniversary. Now I was standing in a rotting building, listening to a criminal try to convince me to become his partner. No, I said finally. No? No deal. No partnership. No compromise. You're going to return the money, all of it, and then you're going to turn yourself in to the authorities. Nathan's expression hardened. And if I refuse, then I release everything I have to the police, the FBI, the state attorney general, and every news outlet in the region. Your criminal associates will learn about your failures from the evening news, and you'll spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. You're making a mistake, Jack. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Nathan stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, you win. I'll return the money and turn myself in, but I want something in exchange. You're not in a position to negotiate. I want Lila's involvement kept out of it. Whatever evidence you have of her participation, I want it destroyed. I thought about this. Despite everything Lila had done, she was still Maddie's mother, and if Nathan was telling the truth about her criminal involvement, exposing it would destroy our daughter's life along with her mother's. If you return every penny and surrender to the authorities within 48 hours, I said, I'll consider keeping Lila's name out of it. That's not good enough. I need a guarantee. Then you should have thought of that before you involved her in your crimes. Nathan's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at it, and his face went white. I have to take this, he said. Go ahead. Nathan answered the phone, and immediately I could hear shouting from the other end. He walked to the far side of the boathouse, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. I couldn't make out the words, but his body language told the story. He was terrified. When he ended the call, he stood with his back to me for nearly a minute before turning around. They know, he said simply. Your criminal associates? They know about the investigation, about the missing money, about everything. Someone tipped them off. Not me. I know, which means someone else has been watching us. Watching you. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? I'm saying we're both in danger now. They don't care about your evidence or your threats. They just want their money back, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. As if summoned by his words, I heard the sound of car engines outside the boathouse. Multiple vehicles, moving fast and cutting their lights as they approached. How many people know about this meeting? Nathan asked urgently. Just my backup team. Then we've been set up. Someone wanted us both here, together, where we'd be easy targets. The reality of the situation hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd been so focused on exposing Nathan's crimes that I'd walked straight into a trap, and now both of us were about to pay the price for my overconfidence. Is there another way out of here? I asked. Nathan pointed toward the back of the building. There's a door that leads to the dock, but it's probably rotted through. We'll have to risk it. As we moved toward the rear exit, I heard voices outside the main entrance. Multiple men, speaking in low tones and positioning themselves around the building. Professional voices, the kind that belonged to people who were very good at making problems disappear. Nathan and I had been enemies 5 minutes ago, but now we were reluctant allies in a fight for survival. It would have been ironic if it weren't so terrifying. The back door was indeed rotted, but it was our only option. I kicked it open, and we stumbled out onto a narrow dock that extended into the dark water. Behind us, I could hear the men entering the boathouse. This way, I whispered, leading Nathan along the shoreline toward where Ray was positioned. If we could reach him, we might have a chance. But as we moved through the darkness, I realized that our problems were just beginning. Nathan's criminal associates weren't going to give up easily, and they had resources that my small-town investigation couldn't match. The game had changed, and the stakes were now higher than I'd ever imagined. We crept along the muddy shoreline, our footsteps muffled by the soft earth. Behind us, I could hear voices echoing from inside the boathouse as Nathan's associates realized their targets had escaped. Flashlight beams began sweeping the area around the building. They'll spread out to search the perimeter, Nathan whispered. We need to get as far away as possible before... A spotlight suddenly blazed to life, illuminating us like actors on a stage. We were caught in the open, 50 yards from any cover, with nowhere to run except into the dark water. "Nathan Hartwell," a voice called out through a bullhorn. "Jack Morrison, please step away from the water and walk slowly toward the boathouse." I squinted against the harsh light, trying to see who was behind it. The voice had an official quality that didn't match what I'd expected from organized crime enforcers. "This is Detective Torres, State Police Financial Crimes Unit. We have the building surrounded. There's nowhere to run." Relief flooded through me as I recognized Mike's voice. My old friend had been monitoring the situation, and when the suspicious vehicles arrived, he'd called for backup. "Mike," I called out. "It's Jack. We're coming out." "Keep your hands visible and move slowly," Torres replied. "We have multiple suspects in custody, but we need to secure the scene." As we walked back toward the boathouse, I could see police vehicles positioned around the building. Several men in expensive suits were being handcuffed and placed in the back of patrol cars. Nathan's criminal associates had walked into the same trap we had, but they'd been caught while we'd managed to escape. "How did you know?" Nathan asked as we approached the police line. "Your phone calls," I said. "I've been monitoring your communications for weeks. When you mentioned dangerous associates, I passed the information to Detective Torres. He's been investigating financial crimes in this area for months." "You set me up. I set up your criminal friends. You just happened to be with them." Torres approached us, his badge clearly visible on his jacket. "Mr. Morrison, are you injured?" "We're fine," I said. "But Nathan here has some information that might be useful to your investigation." Nathan looked around at the police cars, the handcuffed suspects, the end of his carefully constructed criminal empire. When he spoke, his voice was defeated. "I want to make a deal," he said. "That's between you and the prosecutor," Torres replied. "But cooperation is always taken into consideration during sentencing." As Nathan was read his rights and placed in a patrol car, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but it had come at a tremendous personal cost. My marriage was over, my family was shattered, and my quiet life as a small-town electrician was gone forever. "Jack," Torres said, pulling me aside, "there's something else you need to know. We've been investigating your wife's law firm for several months. There's evidence that some of the partners have been facilitating money laundering operations." My heart sank. "Lila? She's not a target of the investigation, but she may have unknowingly provided assistance to the criminal enterprise. We'll need to interview her, but if she cooperates, she probably won't face charges." I nodded, trying to process this latest revelation. Lila had been caught up in something much larger than a simple affair, and now she would have to live with the consequences of her choices. The drive home took place in silence. Torres had offered to have an officer escort me, but I'd declined. I needed time to think about what I was going to tell Lila, how I was going to explain to Maddie that her family had been destroyed by lies and criminal activity. The house was dark when I arrived, but Lila's car was in the driveway. I found her sitting in the living room, still wearing the same clothes she'd had on that morning at the bank. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red from crying. "Is it over?" she asked. "Nathan's been arrested, along with several of his associates. The money will be returned to his victims, and the authorities have enough evidence to put him away for a long time." "And us? What happens to us?" I sat down across from her, studying the face I'd loved for so many years. Despite everything that had happened, she was still beautiful, still the woman I'd married and built a life with. But that life was over now, destroyed by her choices and my response to them. "The police will want to interview you," I said. "They know about your involvement with Nathan's business activities. If you cooperate, you probably won't be charged with anything." "Jack, I swear I didn't know about the money laundering. I thought Nathan was just a successful financial advisor who was attracted to me. But you did help him access client information from your law firm." Lila's silence was answer enough. "Why?" I asked. "Why risk everything for a man you barely knew?" "Because I was tired," she said finally. "Tired of struggling to pay bills, tired of watching other people live the lives I wanted, tired of being married to a man who was content with so little." "Content with our family, you mean? Content with our life together?" "Jack, you're a good man, but you never wanted anything more than what we had. I did. I wanted to travel, to experience culture, to live in a beautiful home and wear nice clothes. Nathan could give me those things." "With stolen money?" "I didn't know that at first. By the time I realized what he was really doing, I was already in too deep. He said if I tried to leave, he'd make sure I was charged as an accessory." I stared at her, trying to understand how the woman I'd married had become someone capable of such self-deception. She'd convinced herself that her desires justified her actions, that her unhappiness gave her the right to betray everyone who trusted her. "What about Maddie?" I asked. "Did you think about what this would do to our daughter? I thought about her constantly, Lila said, her voice breaking. I wanted to give her opportunities, Jack. I wanted her to have the kind of life where she wouldn't have to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. We never had to make that choice. But we never had enough to really live, either. We survived, Jack, but we didn't thrive. I understood then that we'd been living in different worlds for years. I'd seen our modest life as comfortable and secure, while she'd seen it as limiting and disappointing. The gap between our expectations had grown so wide that we'd become strangers sharing the same house. I want a divorce, I said. Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I'll sign whatever papers you want me to sign. I'll be fair about the settlement, but I want primary custody of Maddie. You can see her whenever you want, but she needs stability right now. Of course. Jack, I know you probably can't forgive me, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. I wanted more than love. I wanted excitement, adventure, a different kind of life. And now you'll have it, I said. Just not the way you planned. Over the following weeks, the full scope of Nathan's criminal enterprise became clear. He'd been laundering money for drug dealers, tax evaders, and corrupt politicians for years, using his legitimate investment business as cover. The scheme had netted him millions of dollars, most of which had been spent on maintaining his expensive lifestyle. Lila cooperated fully with the investigation, providing information that helped the authorities trace the flow of money through various accounts and shell companies. In exchange for her cooperation, she was granted immunity from prosecution. But her career as a paralegal was over. No law firm would hire someone who'd been involved, however peripherally, in a major financial crime. Nathan was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. The criminal associates who'd been arrested at the boathouse received similar sentences. The money that had been stolen was recovered and returned to the people who'd been cheated. Maddie took the divorce hard, but she was resilient. She continued to live with me while maintaining a relationship with her mother, who moved to a small apartment across town and took a job as a retail clerk. The family she'd wanted to escape in pursuit of a better life was gone, replaced by the reality of starting over with nothing. As for me, I discovered that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. The quiet electrician who'd been taken for granted had proven capable of taking down a criminal enterprise and protecting the people he cared about. I'd lost my marriage, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could handle whatever challenges life threw at me. 6 months after Nathan's arrest, I received a letter from one of his victims, an elderly woman whose retirement savings had been stolen. She thanked me for my role in recovering her money and told me that my actions had restored her faith in human decency. It was the validation I needed to know that I'd made the right choices, even when those choices had been painful. I never remarried. Maddie graduated from high school with honors and earned a scholarship to study business administration. She said she wanted to help protect people from financial predators like Nathan Hartwell. I was proud of her strength and her sense of justice. Sometimes, late at night in my quiet house, I think about the man I used to be, the trusting husband who believed in the goodness of people and the permanence of love. That man was naive, but he was also innocent in a way that I can never be again. I don't regret the choices I made. I exposed criminals, protected innocent people, and ensured that justice was served. But I also destroyed my family and lost the woman I'd loved for 18 years. The cost of doing the right thing had been higher than I'd ever imagined. In the end, I suppose that's the price of learning that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones most capable of betraying us. And sometimes, the only way to protect the innocent is to become something harder and more dangerous than the criminals who threaten them. I was no longer the mild-mannered electrician who fixed other people's problems. I was the man who'd fixed a much bigger problem by refusing to let criminals destroy innocent lives. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned through my choices, and I could live with that.